Hey everybody, Josh here. I'm the instructor at CourseCareers for the IT course, and then I have Alex here, who's a kind of recent-ish CourseCareers graduate, and they recently got a job as well. So thanks so much for coming on.
Of course, of course. Glad to be here.
Yeah, super appreciate it. So, what did you do before you started with CourseCareers and before you started with IT?
I love one of my favorite questions. So, for the past 20 years, I have been a personal trainer and martial arts instructor. So,
Oh,
yeah, and I love it. I still love it to this day. But 2020 hit.
mm,
And living in New York City, it hit us big because we were on lockdown. And for someone like me who has to be in person all the time, that definitely was difficult to say the least. Prior to all that happening, I was already thinking about transitioning only because, you do this so long. My body was starting to tell me things that it wasn't telling me when I was in my 20s.
oh,
So
gotcha.
at some point I told myself I told myself if I'd rather be preemptive and start thinking about a career change rather than almost being forced out either due to injury or anything. So
Yeah.
I don't operate that way. I always kind of think a couple steps in advance. So it was around that time I decided, let me enroll in a boot camp. So in 2021, I enrolled at a boot camp. It was a part-time accelerated, did three stacks Python, Java, and JavaScript. And in that time, yeah, I loved it. I also realized, at least for someone like me, I realized there was still more I wanted to learn, not just
Mm,
like to also know the why and somehow the hows and all that stuff behind it. So it wasn't until maybe a month prior to graduation I started looking into, where can I possibly pursue a degree in this, and preferably online.
mm.
And that's how I initially ran into a lot of your stuff
Oh,
because
really?
I ended up enrolling at WGU for the cloud computing bachelor's.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
that I'm in that right now. So I love a lot of your strategies and just I like that everything's structured. So I work really well when there's plans. So
Mm,
I did that, and I wasn't really actively looking for positions yet. And then I guess around November of 2022 is when I decided, now it's time to start. Now I'm ready to start throwing my resume out there,
mm,
seeing where I get any bites. I think, I guess, on your YouTube is when the whole Course Careers IT thing came out,
mhm.
and I looked at that, and because WGU, this like their first couple classes is basically IT versus like until you get into like the actual class of like so A plus and Net plus and Security plus. So your course, I mean, I remember looking at it and saying, oh, good, here's another something else I could do that where I could actually apply stuff. So like I
Mm,
think the hard part with a lot of the WGU stuff, and you probably noticed that it's all theoretical. Like it's like even their labs are all right, but
mm.
your stuff was just I can't believe in like a month I'm very well aware of how to use Azure and use a virtual machine and Active Directory and a help desk ticketing system all in a matter. Like I sped through your thing. Like I was one of those. It was I just kept going until I was done. So in December, I think when I enrolled, I finished the entire thing in like 3 weeks or something.
Oh,
Like
wow.
that's how into it I was. I was putting that stuff on GitHub, and what I think the most actually
Mhm.
was actually your interview section.
Oh,
So
really?
like so like I mean for where I applied to Axon, it was pretty thorough interview process and stars up like star interview up the like it was every question was some version of a star.
Oh,
So
really? Really, really? Okay.
like I kid you not, like there was just it really was that and it doesn't feel like it, and then you recognize I'm like, oh, this is a star question. I was like, okay, this is
Mm.
probably what they're looking at. So
Oh, nice.
uh
Yeah, that's cool. That's good to hear. And by the way, you're like the first person to mention the star interview questions, like out of everyone I've interviewed and talked to. Like, so I'm glad to hear that someone used it. So, and so you said it took you about 3 weeks to get through the whole course, or like just the lab section, or like I guess how long did it take you to get
the
through
whole
the?
damn thing. I blew through the whole thing, and then I did the whole thing, took the exam. I remember telling my wife, I was like, I'm gonna, I I feel very confident with this. Yeah, let me just take it right now. And I blew through all that. I did when I get to for me when I get really hyper focused, especially when there's these goals. So your course, like I already knew that I needed to finish this also before the Christmas break and New Year's break. So I was very determined to just nail this low. Like I watched it. I watched on 2x speed, and I typed it. I was like, let's see if I can do it again, and then without looking at it. And I said, you know what? Now I'm ready, and I just bulldozed through that thing. It was not easy. I mean, it's definitely not easy. Like there's a lot of material, but I
Yeah.
guess coming from a coding boot camp, I'm already used to that much information. The boot camp definitely allowed me to know what it feels like to just have
Yeah.
a task after task after task, and you need to just keep pushing. So that was why I think I was successful, at least with the CourseCareers. It just I had a head start, I guess, with some of that stuff.
Yeah, coding bootcamp is not easy. There's like a lot to digest, especially if you're new to coding. So it's cool that you had that going in, honestly. And then from the time you finished the course to the time you actually got your job, do you know how long that was about?
Let's see, November I started applying. December I was still applying. And December, nothing. Come January, like prior to accepting this offer, I was already asked to move to the final rounds of 2 other places. So it
Oh
went from like
shit.
0 to like, yeah. So that's where it went. So like I had to email them and said, I could no longer move forward process. I just accepted the offer. So that's how quick it went from like 0 to like, oh crap. And now, I'm starting to change my LinkedIn so that, I'm not putting the looking for work side. Like I don't, I just want people to know that I'm good now. But yeah, like yeah, this month I had to finally reject 2 other places. So which finally felt good after dealing with like just hundreds, or you get the email that says, yeah, we're moving forward, or or even now, unfortunately, like some of these positions where they were freezing the positions, or they're not, they're going to wait a little bit longer just because I guess whatever the economy or whatever is happening with tech right now. So like it was just a lot of that, and like like you mentioned, you just keep putting that resume in there, keep tweaking. Again, I'll go back again. Let me step back. I had no idea about an applicant tracking system. Last time I was giving resumes, I was giving the resumes. So that was me applying the job. There wasn't having to send it through, something like LinkedIn. So when I got to that section on the resume building, as soon as I found out about an applicant tracking system, I redid a lot of my resume based on a lot of your suggestions. And that's when it started biting a little more.
Oh, nice.
So like buddy of mine also in the training industry out in the West Coast is thinking of transitioning. And I had to explain to him all this. He was like, what's the best route? I forwarded him CourseCareer stuff to him. I have a feeling he's going to sign up, but I told him, like, dude, have you heard of an applicant tracking system? It's like, no. I was like, well, it's kind of like SEO, but for resumes. That's how I explain it. He was like, really? I was like, dude, for real. I was like, you have to get past their system to get a recruiter to finally actually pick up and look at it. And I get it. I know why that exists, but it just it changed a lot. Just being aware of that, and just again, like I said, following a lot of your suggestions again. So like I mean, for your stuff, like if you follow it like a recipe, I don't see why it just doesn't work for 100% of people. You just kind of just have to just go through, and it's gonna hit. I think like so anybody looking for like I am very confident that you'll get your hits eventually. You just have to just it's kind of like workout for me. You just got to put the reps in. The amount of recommendations I've given for your course and telling people just look at these guys. They have it down. It's just one of those things you can follow directly. Just do exactly what they say, and you'll be good. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and you'd be surprised. Like, not a lot of people do. I guess like what I recommend. I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. If people just like took the course and just did everything exactly, I'm sure they would like see some kind of success. But
yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, like I'm someone. I'm not in my 20s anymore. If I could transition careers after at my age and do all this stuff, I don't see how. I feel like this is like one of those, you do this, you'll definitely get that job out of college. Like it's just I don't know. I don't have any other words other than to say that this is almost guaranteed to get you some version of work, some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Are you allowed to give like a ballpark of your salary, like how much you started
Well,
at?
I could get. Well, I'll definitely give what was on the job description. The range was from 80,000 in their lowest geographic market to 120,000 in their highest geographic market.
Damn.
So I'm definitely not on the low end. I'm definitely not on the ultimate high end. So that should say enough about busting into tech and with that kind of salary. So I was like, my jaw dropped. But yeah, so I mean that's how they determine. I don't know, but that is what was on their job description on their end for software support. So
Oh,
it
okay.
was pretty sick, pretty
Yeah,
sick. So
yeah, that's
okay,
very cool. Congrats on that, by the way.
okay,
That's really good.
yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yep.
Yeah. And was there any part of the course, like if somebody's watching this and they're like, well, maybe I'll take course careers. Is there any part that you recommend them to pay like extra attention to, or like your favorite part, or anything like this?
Understanding I guess the basics of ticketing systems, I believe. So like
Hmm.
if you really understand one ticketing system well, you'll be able to pick up others. So
Yeah.
definitely just knowing that a ticketing system in some places, I'm sure you'll be gauged on how quickly you answer. There's going to be a metric for how many tickets you have to solve or have to answer within your position. But just really understand the inner workings of it, so that I guess should you go to a company where they do train you, it'll just be easier to pick up. And then the other part, the interview section, like if you're going for these types of positions, then that interview section of yours, the tech part, and thank God I didn't really have too much of a like tech questions for an interview, but definitely the behavioral, the interview section is definitely I think where people might easily gloss over, because
Hmm.
it's very easy to focus on just knowing the skills part versus just now you kind of have to sell yourself to the person that's
Hmm.
potentially hiring you. So I mean, I am prior to all this, I'm not the best interviewer just because it's been so long. I could say now that I feel a lot better with my interview skills than prior to learning about some of that with your videos. But knowing how to come up with really clear, concise answers. I know one of my weaknesses tends to either if I'm nervous or too excited, I tend to be very wordy. So I'm working on just being very direct, just like I said. It does take practice. You almost have to like stand in front of a mirror and just literally talk it out and just
Yeah.
practice it. I would say the ticketing systems definitely and the interview sections are going to be pretty important. So
Gotcha. Yeah, like in
yeah.
interviewing, it's really easy to underestimate how hard it is to interview because you have to mentally like juggle so many things and you don't really realize it's happening in the interview. You just like get out of the interview and you're like, what happened? But like you said, it's good to practice
Yeah.
beforehand. So when you actually go to the interview, your mind is like at least somewhat clear and you can, be concise and all
Yeah,
those
I
things.
mean, for me, some of the things that helped me out, you definitely have more time than you think in your head. You feel like sometimes you have to answer fast,
Mm,
and it really is that's your brain thinking there's not enough time, and you really have a lot of time. So really just pausing and thinking and then speaking will be a game changer for a lot. I had to learn that, I definitely did have more time than I thought in my head.
yeah.
And for someone like me, I think when I was doing the interviews, because a client of mine suggested, when you interview, are you sitting or are you standing? I said, I'm sitting. He's like, well, then why don't you try standing in your next interviews? And for me,
Oh,
who is a trainer and teaches martial arts, that was clutch for me. It just made me feel like I was in my element standing. So like, just
mm,
because I guess it's a posture I'm very familiar with. So
mm.
so that that definitely helped, and pausing but and just practicing. So like that was that would be I guess my advice to other people who are getting ready for some of these interviews. Like just find a posture, something where you feel that you feels natural in, and then everything else kind of feels natural after that. But if you're someone who sits a lot and tries to do it standing, it's probably not going to happen, and vice versa. And then
Uh,
take your time, know that you have a lot of time, and just think about the question a little bit. There's nothing wrong with saying, like I think you mentioned this. There's nothing wrong with saying, let me think about that for a second,
yeah,
and just
yeah,
pausing a little bit,
yeah.
and then spitting out your answer. So that all like I said, I went through your stuff. I remember all this. So I mean, it really is. I just practice exactly what you said.
Shoot, I'm glad it worked out. You put in a lot of work. Not only like course careers, you did a lot of stuff, and then congratulations on your like awesome new
Thank,
career.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah, that was very cool. And then for this is not necessarily course careers related, just like anyone who is trying to get into IT as someone who is recently very successful, do you have any kind of final general advice for those people?
It's very easy to get distracted with all the things you think you have to potentially learn. Just like I said, you do have a
Mm,
lot of time to really absorb this stuff. You don't have to like for me, like example, when I was going through something like coding dojo, I was like, oh, I'm learning Python. I was like, wait a minute, there's Flask. Oh, there's also Django. Wait, oh, there's also this. Like maybe I should be learning that too. Like just stay focused, focus on the basics and fundamentals, and it definitely carries you forward. And from my experience, I mean, I guess the only reason I do say that is because as a trainer, it's also easy to get distracted by all the fun, cool exercises.
mm,
And then when they come to me, I was like, no, we focus on the things that work. So a lot of it is basics, and then it carries you forward. So for other people out there that are trying to transition in, definitely just focus on one thing first. And then
mm.
try to filter out a lot of the noise. It's very easy to. You might hear somebody is like, "Oh, I did this and this is why I got to that." Don't just stay focused and then just keep it simple. It will go a long way for a lot of individuals, I believe.
Cool, thanks for that. And then this is like not related, but what martial arts did you train? Can I ask?
Oh, I teach and train the broad term's Filipino martial arts. So you can either hear it as Kali or Nis or Screama. It's very much related to arts like Silat, if you've seen it. So I mean, how I like to explain to people, if you've seen any of the Born Identities, what Matt Damon does is some version of Filipino martial arts, where you find whatever's in your hand and you have to turn it into a useful weapon or
Oh, gotcha.
self-defense tool. So that's
Oh, that's
what
cool.
I teach. So
That's kind
yeah.
that's dope.
It's pretty dope, dude. Like I love it. I love it. Like I love everything about it. So
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for this. I'm sure a lot of people are going to find it really interesting and helpful and useful. So yeah, thanks again.
of course, thank you for having me.